the Prime Minister of Israel, the President of the United States, and probably the most underreported yet historic thing that the president certainly has done. One of the most historic things that he has done since he has taken office, a promise that he kept, which, by the way, was not kept by 4 previous presidents that all said they would do the same thing. Joining us now with more to discuss this, our friend Kellyanne Conway is back, counselor to the president. How are you?
I'm great, Sean. How are you today?
I'm good. You know, this is so important on so many different levels. Number one, It's been promised by so many people, and the promise never, ever gets fulfilled. Now it got fulfilled. And then, you know, all these people that said they wanted it over the years, oh, we can't really do it. And I'm like, yeah, you really can, and it's done.
Sean, it's pretty remarkable because not only have past presidents, both Democratic and Republican presidents, promised to do this, vowed this to do this, in part, I think, to curry favor and get votes, but you had the United States Senate beginning in 1995 by a vote of 93-5, folks. That's not a rounding error, not a close call. 93-5, huge bipartisan support to do exactly this. President Bill Clinton was in the Oval at the time, and he, in 1999, when it was supposed to become turned into reality, he took the 6-month waiver. President Bush followed suit. They've all promised, but as is usually the custom around here, it took Donald Trump as president to deliver. Just this past June, the Senate agreed with this by unanimous vote. And you talk to some of these Democratic and Republican Senate offices, you talk to the members themselves. And I think the one common thread is that they voted for it because they believe in it, but they voted for it because they also believe there'd never be a president to sign it into law. Look what happened with repealing and replacing Obamacare. You had the House and the Senate vote on it dozens of times. Literally, you get a guy as president who's willing to make it the law, and they can't get it through. Very similar here.
Let me go to the other big story that we've been following, and this has been an unbelievable week in terms of discoveries that we've had. And, you know, we now know that the email server scandal, that the fix was in, and the fix was in by James Comey and this guy Peter Strzok, who's a Hillary lover supporter, and James Comey, and they actually changed the wording from the legal definition of gross negligence to extreme carelessness. But it goes deeper as it relates to Peter Strzok. He was involved in the dossier issue. He was involved in interviewing General Michael Flynn. He was involved in interviewing Hillary. She wasn't under oath. Involved in interviewing Uma Abedin and Cheryl Mills. Now we know he's a vicious partisan. And, you know, you can go through the list of scandals. Then we got the Mueller team that's appointed, and you only have big Democratic donors, 8 of the 16. And then you have someone like Andrew Weissman, who apparently was partying at Hillary Clinton's Christmas party this year, but on top of that donated money to Clinton and Obama, and has one of the most atrocious track records that we've ever seen, holding back exculpatory evidence in one case, overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court 9-0, overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs because of his actions, and innocent people went to jail because of his actions. You know, what do you think of this team that Mueller has put together?
Serious concerns were raised from the outset as he was adding lawyers because it was revealed that a number of them, as you correctly say, are Democratic donors. Now, everybody has political judgments and beliefs, but when you are meant to be independent and impartial, and that independence and impartiality and transparency is critical to running investigations that reflect independence and transparency and impartiality. You cannot be so blatant as to, I think, pal around with and enjoy the Hillary Clinton, quote, victory party that wasn't, which is where Andrew Weissman was, blatantly giving money, and lots of money, by the way, significant amounts of money, to one candidate. But now, Sean, what really strikes me, and what I want your listeners to know, is so much of this activity was occurring during the transition. Why? Because they didn't expect her to lose and him to win. And there's a common thread here, too, about the rush that was on to change the election results and go back and try to discredit the newly democratically elected president so that maybe he would never be seated in the first place. The other thing is that when it comes to this investigation, we're not talking about the 35,000 FBI rank and file employees. The president has made very clear that he respects the rank and file, but the I in the FBI, in their motto, stands for integrity and, fidelity, bravery, integrity. And it's being called into question with respect to this investigation because there's just too many coincidences here. I have to really credit a number of the members of Congress at that hearing yesterday with FBI Director Wray. They asked the right questions about the impartiality and the partisan inclinations and predilections and activities of some of these investigators. And they did it. Sometimes Republicans can be hearing impaired at these congressional hearings. They were excellent. They really asked the right questions. And anybody who doesn't want to cover this part of the whole FBI investigation, DOJ saga, is being completely disingenuous. They've wasted over a year covering their part of it with very little to show. They are duty-bound to continue. What about this guy Orr? This guy Orr in the Department of Justice. He was on the main justice floor. He's 4 doors down from the Deputy Attorney General, his boss. And he's out there allegedly meeting with the Fusion GPS dossier makers who took money, millions from the Clinton campaign and the DNC to put together a dossier, which Jim Comey, by the way, under oath in March, referred to as salacious and unverified. It has salacious and unverified details. He changed his tune since, maybe, but go back and look at his testimony in March.
You know, I look at all of this, Kellyanne, and I really have been hitting this really hard. And I watch, and yesterday was the first day that if anybody had watched any other cable network in the last year, all of what happened and was unfolding yesterday they probably would have been hearing it for the first time. This has been a huge onion now that we have been literally, taking a slice a day off of, that has now brought us to the point where we know a lot of things. We know that the email server scandal investigation, we know that the fix was in because they were exonerating Hillary and drafting that letter long before they had done the investigation. We similarly now know Hillary paid for the dossier. We know that the FBI was very interested in the dossier, and Bruce Orr actually met with Fusion GPS and met with Christopher Steele in that particular case. And we know the dossier was bought and paid for by Hillary and the Democratic Committee, the DNC, that she was running, according to Donna Brazile. And, when you think of that one issue in particular, and then you got to really take it the next step with the Russian propaganda and lies. If everyone's so concerned about Russian propaganda, was that the predicate for the warrants that were used to surveil, now I would argue illegally, a opposition candidate during an election or a president-elect post-election? It appears that all happened.
All excellent questions, Sean, and ones that I say go to the heart of all of this now. And anybody, and I'm looking up at the TV screens right now, people are uncovering this side of it by and large, a little bit here and there. But the reason they're not covering it is that this does not support the conclusion they've already made. They've had a conclusion in search of evidence for over a year. They've wasted an entire year. And there were news reports this week that so far the Mueller investigation has cost taxpayers $6.7 million. That's fine, but we need to know that there are independent, impartial folks working on this every step of the way. Not just reassigned, quietly demoted. We need to know. Maybe they should be put under oath and asked, what did you do? Why did you do it? Did you ever meet with X, Y, and Z? What would be the purpose? What would be the purpose of meeting with the person who had put together a commission, the dossier, who was paid millions of dollars by a partisan organization, the DNC, which, by the way, has no money. They wasted it all on a phony baloney dossier, and took money from the Clinton campaign, which had so much money to burn, which proved yet again the fastest way to make a small fortune is to have a very large one and waste most of it with a terrible candidate. This woman had every advantage. It tells you she's even a worse candidate than we had imagined and thought, because she had all these advantages, including this, and couldn't get it done. But people have a right to know in their government, on the taxpayer dime, folks, who is actively working against your democratically elected president and vice president. It's an important issue, and it should not go away. Those who say,
stay right there.
It's a dream that this investigation will be over soon. It ought to continue if it means adding this piece of it.
Well, there's so many things that need to be redone. I mean, you can't have the fix, and that's called obstruction of justice. Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president, is with us. As we continue, Kellyanne Conway with us. She, of course, counsel to the president. No matter what happens, it just seems that there's a never-ending obsession with going after this president, and it really started on November the 9th. Now you've got people on Liberal Morning Joe and his band of anti-Trumpers over there every day. It's so personal, and it's so vitriolic, and there's so much hate behind it. It's like they're bordering on having emotional breakdowns every morning on TV, which might actually make for interesting TV. But, at any point, does this begin to wear on you? You've got so many people that's just attacking the president from every different angle?
In a word, no. and they can keep trying, whoever the they is. I'm not going to be specific to any individuals, especially if I don't watch their shows. But look, just in the main, there are very few reporters who have really taken the time, Sean, to get to know this president and his decision-making and the way that he accepts and really expects lots of different input and ideas in individuals. He welcomes dissent. He welcomes disagreement. He knows he's the ultimate decision maker. It's an absolute pleasure to work for him. It's frankly an absolute pleasure to work for him as a woman and as a mother of school-age children, because we're all respected and included. And I think that's what really drives the liberals crazy. You have a new female Homeland Security, Director of Homeland Security in the cabinet today. Her deputy's female. You've got a lot of top-level women in the cabinet. It just drives them crazy because it just upends all their narratives about him. Now, I will also tell you that because some people thought he wouldn't last very long, it's self-laughable. They really have lazily not tried to get to know him, his senior team, the way decisions are made. It's easy for them to spit into the wind. Most of the criticism out there comes in print or on TV. It comes from people who have never worked in a White House, let alone this White House. Some folks are just jealous of him, frankly, and a lot of folks don't have access to him, including those who had access for a very long time. And it was their oxygen, it was their gold, and now they don't have it. And it's going to be a very long 8 years for those who don't have access and don't understand him.
A lot of crybabies out there that think everything in life is about them, and it's not.
That's why I'm walking on sunshine at all times.
I love that. All right, Kellyanne Conway, as always, thank you for being with us. News